What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 129. Back to recap week three. A really, entertaining week across the SEC, across college football. Um, we're going to jump right into the game of the week, game day in attendance, South Carolina and LSU. Huge game for both these teams. South Carolina comes in 2-0, LSU 1-1 after that close loss to USC. Looking to redeem themselves against another USC. Yeah, just a crazy game, back and forth. We had turnovers, we had some bad officiating, we had some great plays, some long busted runs. Just all in all, really fun game to watch. Just got to get your thoughts on the outcome of this game, just kind of what you saw from both teams, and with LSU and South Carolina.
Starting out, obviously, one of the most entertaining games of college football I've seen in a while. Definitely one of the best SEC games we've had in quite some time. But no, I mean, cutting to the chase, man, it was a sloppy game. Not even officiating aside, it was a sloppy game. There were constant penalties. I know South Carolina that they set themselves back on multiple drives from false starts, things along those lines. LSU had a couple offsides, had a couple false starts, turnovers here and there. Early in the game, it was second drive for South Carolina. South Carolina was up 7-0. Throws a pick in the end zone. He did get hit when he threw the ball, but that hurts. They just had some mistakes and kind of hurt themselves. But the big takeaway, really, what everybody's talking about is the officiating. And Cam and I, we if there's bad officiating or bad calls, we'll talk about it, but we don't really harp on officiating too much. But man, Saturday it was some of the worst I'd seen in a long time. I know just I'm going to just name a few right here. Early on, believe it was first quarter, but I could be wrong on that. But it was South Carolina was on offense. They throw a ball down the left hash. The ball is underthrown. There is no way that the receiver or the DB is going to catch this ball. It is underthrown, just a bad ball. The South Carolina receiver had the LSU DB beat, but the ball is underthrown, and that's what you do. I mean, that's being a good quarterback. You underthrow a ball, get a chance. You get a lot of times you'll get a PI, but this ball was nowhere close to being catchable. Should not have been a PI. It extends South Carolina's drive. They end up scoring. I think they got 3 on that drive, but still, they end up scoring. And then, obviously, the one that everybody's talking about, the pick six, the first pick six that South Carolina had, they got called back. That's not too terrible of a call. It could go either way. I'll give it to you either way. But the final pick six that would have won South Carolina the game, it would have made them go up 40-24 or whatever it was at the time, or 30 something. I don't remember what the score was at the time, but it sealed the game for South Carolina. And it got called back because they said it was a crackback blocker roughing the passer on Garrett Nussmeier. And we all know how big of a Nussmeier fan I am. I love the kid. Think he's amazing. Really, really big fan of his. But that was the biggest BS call I've ever seen. If you watch the clip, he throws the ball. He realizes the guy picks it off, and then he takes a step to take off and go try and make a tackle. And that's when South Carolina, I can't remember the guy's name, the South Carolina guy, throws his arms up. It might have been a Kennedy guy. He throws his arms up, hits him in the shoulder pad. He was kind of off to his left, but he was definitely not beside him. He was in front of him. And he just throws his arms up, gives him a shove, and Oscar goes to Garrett Nussmeier because he had a well of an acting job selling that like it was a bigger hit than it was. And then obviously gets called back. LSU ends up scoring, and they end up obviously winning the game from that. But that, like me and Cam were talking before we started recording, officiating like that, like it was bad all game, but there was definitely some that LSU screwed up on and South Carolina screwed up on for sure. But there was definitely some ticky-tack stuff that I didn't agree with. But the main one being the pick six that won in the game, because at the time of interception, Garrett Nussmeier is now a defender. He's no longer a quarterback. He's a defender. And yeah, I know you can't crack back people anymore, but it was not a crackback block. He was a foot and a half away from him. He took a step and shoved him. I mean, it was a high school bully shoving a nerd into a locker is all he did. It's not like he drove him to the ground, landed on top of him. He literally just just throwing a block, going and looking for the next shot. Like that guy's not making the tackle. Where's the next one? That's all it was, just a football play, and he is penalized for it, and it ends up costing him the game. And Cam was saying it was nowhere near the play, and that can fall on both sides of the argument. You say it was nowhere near the play, there was no reason he should have made the block, and it wouldn't have mattered in the long run, and they would have never had the penalty. They would have won the game. But then you can also say it was nowhere near the play. Why throw that flag at that point? Because it's not egregious. It's clearly South Carolina just walked it off and won it on a pick six. Just take your hand out of the final of the game. It's not like it had an effect on the play at all. That's what breaks my heart really for the South Carolina kids, because man, everybody counted them out. They were 22.5 point underdog, or 23.5 point underdog, I think is what it closed at, going into the game at home, and they put up a fight. Lenore Sellers going out early really hurt them because their offense became one dimensional after that. If Lenore Sellers, it's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, or candy and nuts. Every day will be Christmas, you know what they say. But if Lenore Sellers never got hurt, South Carolina wins this game, but probably 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was driving the offense like it was nothing against that poor LSU defense. But they got bailed out by the refs, man. It looked like they were wearing Kansas City Chiefs uniforms out there on Saturday. So good for them. But I'll get off my soapbox, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a great start for South Carolina. I mean, jumping out to a 17-0 lead, had LSU on the ropes early. I mean, credit to LSU for battling back and not panicking down 17 on the road. I mean, it was absolutely rocking in there early on. Like you said, I think Lenore Sellers going down really took South Carolina's balance away. I mean, not that they were great in the passing game, but they had that threat and were able to hit a few plays down the field. Running game was great. I mean, Rocket Sanders busted a long one.
Yeah.
In the second half, Lenore Sellers had that long touchdown run off a zone read in the first half. So, yeah, got the run game going with some explosive plays, but they had some semblance of balance with Sellers in there, but once he went down, it just really handcuffed the offense, and I think that was a big reason they weren't nearly as successful in the second half. They weren't able to really, they were able to key in on the run game a little bit. Still had success, but just wasn't quite as effective in the second half. You said it right. A bunch of turnovers in this game, some interceptions, some fumbles. I mean, it was sloppy. But LSU, in the second half, kind of got it together after going down early. Was able to put some drives together. Nussmeier, obviously it wasn't his best game, but was still able to make some throws to kind of get him back in the game.
They asked him to throw it 40 times.
Yeah, yeah. LSU ran the ball okay, but they didn't run it near as well as South Carolina did. I think, LSU
that
still
freshman back though is good. Durham,
yeah, Durham. Yeah, I was about to
bouncing
say
off tacklers like it's nothing.
Yeah, he had a great game. Kind of burst onto the scene as a true freshman. So really impressed with him. Gave them a little bit more balance than they've been having. That's for sure. But I still think they want to be, a little bit more balanced where they're not having to rely on Nussmeier so much in that passing game, because they have a really good offensive line. And I was impressed. I mean, this was a big test for, South Carolina. We saw what they did against Kentucky last week and what they've done the first few weeks. And I was impressed what they were able to do against a really good LSU offensive line. They were still able to wreak some havoc. All in all, I was really impressed with them. Like I said, just a few mistakes here and there, a couple calls, obviously, that didn't go their way. But I will say this with South Carolina: if they can play with this kind of effort the rest of the way, they're going to be fine. Like they're going to have a good season. Obviously, a really tough schedule as usual for them. But I've been really impressed with them so far, and I think they're better than I expected. And they're a really good team. So LSU's a good team. It was 2 good teams going at it. But I was impressed with the way LSU was able to not panic. It's easy when you get down early on the road, everybody's against you. It's easy to kind of let it slip away, but they were able to work themselves back in the game made the plays they needed to get themselves back in it. Then ultimately win it late. I like you said with the pick six being called back. Just thought that was a tough one. I like you said, I just don't think it would. I don't think it warranted a crack back or rough in the pack, rough and unsportsmanlike, whatever you want to call it. I just didn't think it warranted that. The hit really wasn't egregious. It looked worse than what it really was. Um, but I just, like I said, it took a pick six off the board. Um, I believe South Carolina had a 3-point lead, so that would have made it a 10-point lead, 2-score game. At that point in the fourth quarter, they're sitting in really good shape. It was still fairly early in the fourth quarter, but all in all, they probably end up winning that game if that call stands. So,
It was a two
yeah,
possession lead at that time.
I hated to see that. But all in all, it was a really good game, and um, it's two really good teams going at it. Brian Kelly looked like he was more relieved than anybody I've ever seen when they missed that final kick. Man, it looked like he was about to have an aneurysm sideline all game. I mean, he was as red could be. He was as red as this cup right here. I mean, it was it
And
was
you
something to
feel for
watch.
that South Carolina kicker because he kicked the first one, but they iced him.
Yeah.
And the first one he kicked, he missed wide right.
Mm-hmm.
He missed it right, but they iced him. I'm like, oh, he's got every time that happens, they end up making it every time.
Yep.
He overcorrected too much and went wide left the next time. And I was like, I couldn't believe it because every time you ice a kicker and they miss, they drill it right down the middle the next time. You gave them that practice shot, now they got it. He just
Yep.
I felt so bad for that kid, man, because he just overcorrected.
Yeah, he made a really long kick earlier in the game from about the same distance. I would
I
have
believe
liked,
LSU had a missed extra point early in the game, though.
yeah, yeah,
And so that would have even taken them out of that, wouldn't have even had to worry about it. But it always comes back to bite you.
yeah. I like you said too with that final kick. It was good almost the whole way there, and at the very end, it just tailed. It just had a little bit to the left. It looked like it was going to be good, and like I said, just slid it barely. I mean, it barely missed the left upright. Um, yeah, all in all, like you said, once somebody gets iced, they usually nail the next one. So yeah, I hated that. I would have loved to have seen it go to overtime too.
Yeah,
It felt
yeah.
like this game deserved to go to overtime,
I
but
would
all
have
in
too,
all,
because if LSU would have won, it means they would have covered. So they didn't cover, and I lost money on them. So I was hoping it was going to overtime because that was my only prayer.
yeah. So but all in all, really, really entertaining game.
And I
You
want to
know,
correct myself. I called him Kennedy earlier. Kyle Kennard is his name, number
Falconer,
5 D
yes.
lineman. If you didn't know it, I mean, he's a senior, but if you didn't know his name, you know it now. Dude had a well of a day. Their defensive front is way, way better than where they've been when Shane Beamer took over. So he's doing great things there, but their defensive front is they're something serious.
Yeah, they're to deal with. I mean, what they did against, Kentucky, obviously, what they did against what they were able to do against LSU, I thought was pretty impressive considering, what's on the other side there. So, yeah, all in all, really, really fun game. Just one of those swing games that could go either way. That's big when you look back, towards the end of the season. It's just another one of those games that could have went either way. Both teams. South Carolina obviously feels like it was a big missed opportunity because you don't get that kind of setup very often with game day in town. Early in the season to get to 3-0. You just don't get those opportunities all the time, and to feel like you kind of had it and lose it there at the end was definitely tough. But LSU needed this one to stay. I mean, obviously it was the first SEC game, but you don't want to get a second loss this early in the season with so many games remaining, such a tough schedule down the stretch. So that was a big one for them to get.
Absolutely. And then going up to Madison. Last week hey, if anybody took my betting advice this week on college football, I am terribly sorry because we had a bad week. If you rode with me, we had a bad week.
Yeah, I did as well.
I didn't take this game, but I did give my input on this game, and it wasn't worth shit because I said I think 16 is a little too large. I think Wisconsin keeps it within that 16 because every other offense Alabama's played up to this point has been able to drive down the field. They've just turned it over or can't finish the job once they're at the goal line. Well, boy, was I wrong. Alabama, I guess they were just playing on sleepwalk mode the first 2 weeks because they came out and they showed out, dominated on both sides of the football. Jalen Milroe, much as I hate to say it, might be the best quarterback in college football right now. Definitely liking seeing uh, DeBoer's offense lean more into Milroe's running ability. Obviously, we saw it more in the latter part of last season, but I feel like they're leaning on it a lot more than what we saw in past, especially when they started to lean on it more last year. It's more than that right now.
Yeah,
And as much as I hate watching Alabama succeed, he's fun to watch, man. He is so much fun to watch run that offense. They've tailored it to him perfectly. Ryan Williams, man, kid is a rock star. I mean, it seems like every time he catches the ball, it's a touchdown. What's he caught like 7 passes and got like 5 touchdowns or something like that? Something crazy. The kid
yeah,
is
like
he's 17 years old and he's wide receiver one for sure on this Alabama team. Reminds you a lot of a Ruggs, maybe a Jerry Jeudy with how he's able just to get open at will. Uh, he really reminds me a lot of Ruggs. I'm going to be honest with you. Just he gets open any part of the field, any route he runs, he's going to be wide open just about every time.
Yeah, all in all, I mean, it was a great team performance all the way around. It was unfortunate. Tyler Van Dyke got knocked out in the first drive.
Yeah. I don't
Tough
think it
being
would have made much of a difference.
no. I mean, Alabama's seen Tyler Van Dyke before. The broadcast kept referencing too, like this was a quarterback battle. They didn't name it till late in camp
Yeah.
with Braden Locke. Um, I thought he did pretty good, under the circumstances. But all in all, I don't think there was a huge drop off between the two quarterbacks. I mean, I think it would have been a pretty similar outcome. I mean, I don't think Tyler Van Dyke's changing the game. No offense to him, but I did hate to see, I hate to see him get knocked out that early. His season's over now. They announced today, which is really unfortunate. So I hate that. I hate that for him. But yeah, just all in all, good team performance. Like you said, the thing that stuck out the most is how heavily they're leaning on the quarterback run. They're not afraid to use that. They're making that a big part of the offense, which I like because he's, the most dynamic athlete on the field. I'm liking. And I think too, they're running a lot of reads where, they're giving him the option. Obviously he can hand it off, he can keep it, and there was times he could have handed it off and didn't get much on the play, but I like them being aggressive with it. I think obviously it's been a big play offense so far. They lead the country in plays of 20 yards or more so far. So it's been very, you kind of saw that last year too, and that kind of plays into Milroe's strengths. He's really good throwing the ball down the field. Um, I thought the big turning point in the game was not that it really decided it, but it pretty much effectively ended the game. It's 14-3. Wisconsin misses the field goal before half,
Mhm.
and I loved Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan being aggressive there
Yeah.
before half. You had 3 timeouts. You had 40 something seconds, I believe.
Go get
I
some points.
liked being
Yeah.
aggressive there, pushing the ball down the field, at least getting 3 out of it potentially.
Dude, y'all didn't kick a field goal all day. You did kick a field goal all day.
Yeah, so two plays in the they did miss one early first drive.
That's true. That's true. That's
Nicholson
true.
did miss one. Other than that,
It was all touchdowns.
yeah, it was all touchdowns. But yeah, I liked being aggressive there. 2 plays, put it in the end zone, 21-3 at half, getting the ball after half, score it. So being able to score off of turnovers, I think this is what you're going to see out of the Alabama defense this year with the new scheme. You're going to see teams go on some drives.
Mhm.
South Florida did it, especially with the quarterback run. Um, Western Kentucky had a drive where they went on a long drive, whatever. But I think that's just the way football is moving. I think that's why you're seeing some closer games with the clock rules. Teams are, and you
Portal
see that,
definitely helps.
you see it in the NFL too. You're going to give up yards in between the 20s. It's just the way offenses are, the way the game is tailored. You're going to give up some yards. Can you hold up in the red zone and hold people to field goals? I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. I think you're seeing Alabama play some zone a good bit. You know, letting giving up the underneath stuff. Because if you got a good quarterback, it's hard to stop the underneath game. I mean, it's
Mhm.
hard. It's almost impossible now to take everything. Like you got to give
Something's there.
a little bit somewhere. You're seeing some teams take the underneath routes. Um, there's been a couple plays down the field that should have been hit. A better quarterback would hit, but I think all in all, the secondaries play pretty well, especially considering how young they are. You're seeing some underneath routes, being hit, some plays being extended, but for the most part, they're holding teams to field goals. Um, really, Wisconsin only had that one touchdown drive. They really did nothing outside of that
And
one.
that was late. The game was out of hand by that point. The game
Yeah,
was over.
it was in the second half. They were down three or
Yeah.
four scores, I believe. So they did go on that one drive, but outside of that, they shut it down. I thought the defensive front was really disruptive. LT Overton turned into a star before our eyes. He's kind of at that what they call the bandit position in Kane Womack's defense. Um, thought he's been good against the run, getting after the quarterback. Obviously was able to get some takeaways in this game. Um, that's a key with this defense too. You're seeing them get more turnovers than the defense last year was able to get. So and then being able to turn those into scores was big in this game as well. But yeah, really all in all, a great team performance. I think too, and why I didn't panic much, unlike a lot of people did after the South Florida game, you can tell a big difference when your starting tackles are out. When
Yeah.
your starting
Yeah.
tackles are in the ball game, the quality of what Alabama has, you saw a total 180 difference this week. Offensive line was dominant in the run game. Jalen Milroe didn't get hit in the pocket all day. The only time he got hit when we ran it,
Yeah.
on the read option or whatever, or scrambled. Didn't get hit in the pocket all day. Don't even know if he really had hardly anybody near him in the pocket. Thought Caden Proctor, like I said, made a huge difference being in the lineup. Elijah Pritchett, even Formby when he got in was better this week. You limited penalties. You won the turnover battle. If they do that, they're going to win. They're going to win most of the games. So all in all, it's a good performance. But I didn't think by any means it was near their best performance. That's the good thing is there's still levels to get to. There's still a lot of development to be had. But yeah, to go on the first road test and handle business like they did was definitely a good sign. A little bit costly. Malachi Moore got knocked out of the game a little early. He's going to be fine, though. They said Quay Rusall, who's kind of burst on the scene himself this year, has an ankle injury. Um, Not sure about his status for the Georgia game. But looks like he avoided a super long term injury, like a season ender. The way it looked, it was a little friendly fire on the tackle, got his leg hit. Looked like it could have been bad. Looked like it was a season ender. That's what you always are scared of when you see that happen. Looks like he avoided that though, so not. We'll find out more about his status later. But I hate turf fields. By the way, hate turf fields. Um, Terrible on knees. Um, the injuries I mentioned weren't caused by that, but Richard Young, a third string back, messed his knee up. Looked like so. Hate turf fields, want natural grass on all playing surfaces. I know the weather's bad up there, but that's all I got to say. Good team win though, and get ready for Georgia now.
Absolutely. And then Eli Drinkwitz, he had a little bit of a scare this weekend. Went down early, was able to fight back. Definitely had his defense stepped up, forced two turnovers to help him out. But man, Boston College, they're good. They played them extremely well. I took Missouri to cover too. They obviously did not cover. Um, they were able to run the ball really, really well. Boston College was not able to run the ball. That's really what the difference in the game was. Boston College couldn't really run the ball at all. I mean, they were able to throw it around the yard. Dude threw for 3 touchdowns. Um, and Boston College's defense, they gave Missouri some fits early, definitely early. They only allowed them 2 touchdowns. The rest of them, they were just driving and they'd stall out and kick field goal. But I don't think Missouri is as good as everybody thought they were at the beginning of the year. I don't think they're a bad team by any means. I just don't think they're quite as up to the same level as everybody expected them to be at the beginning of the year. But I also think Boston College is a lot better than what we remember Boston College being our whole lifetime. O'Brien's got them; he's got them rolling down there. Really like the way they play. Obviously, it was tough not being able to run the football, which props to Missouri's defense. You know, they put it out of their mind. Their front seven's really nice. But they kind of got picked apart in the passing game. But again, their plan once they were able, when they came out early and were getting shut down, their plan the way they came out in the second half, I really liked the way they attacked it, and obviously were able to put up some points. And their defense really kept them in it the whole game. In the second half, it was pretty much all Missouri. Late in the game, uh, Boston College made some pushes, but it was too much, too late, or too little, too late. Missouri had already had it in the bag, so I thought it was a really good game, but I was a little underwhelmed with how Missouri performed on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, got off to a slow start. Obviously, I mean, you said it, they were really impressed with Boston College. Thomas Castellanos, a really good quarterback. I mean, we saw that against Florida State, which I don't know how much that means now, but obviously Boston College is a pretty good team all in all. I mean, they jumped out to an early lead. Obviously, at that point, pretty much blew any chance of a cover from Missouri. I like what they did after that, though. Once they got going, you mentioned the run game really got going. Really like Nate Noel from Missouri. Um, Brady Cook, had a really nice day as well. So I really liked their plan offensively. It took a little bit of time to get it going, but once they did, thought the final 3 quarters they played well. And I agree with what you said about Missouri. I think good thing for them is their schedule's pretty favorable. I mean, this A&M game here in on the 5th of October is a huge swing game for them. If they can get that one, they're sitting in pretty good shape down the stretch. I agree with you. I wouldn't put them quite to the same level just off the top. I mean, obviously there's still a lot more to be played, a lot more to find out about them. I wouldn't put them in the same level as a Georgia, Texas, a Bama, Ole Miss, Tennessee. I would say those teams are better. But I'll be honest with you, being the 6th best team in the SEC right now is pretty damn good.
Yeah, pretty damn
Because
good.
the SEC is absolutely loaded. Like, this is still a legit top. They're in the top 10 right now, obviously. They're still easily a top 10 to 15 team at worst. So, still really good. Good thing for them. As I said, their schedule favors them pretty
Mhm.
well. They've still got Arkansas, Mississippi State, UMass, Vandy, Auburn. They got Oklahoma at home. The big road games at A&M, at Alabama, at South Carolina are going to be tough, obviously. Um, but all in all, a pretty as we've highlighted in the previous series, a pretty favorable schedule compared to the rest of the SEC. So they got a real chance to be in it the entire way this year. But I want to see them, as they continue to go. That A&M game, I'm really gonna have my eyes on. But after the first quarter or so, really good performance out of Missouri. Hate they didn't cover though. That was one of my picks last week. Didn't pan out. I'll tell you something else that hadn't panned out, and that's Billy Napier at Florida. Um, I don't want to get lost on this game because obviously the big takeaway everybody's talking about is Florida and Billy Napier. Like, that's the takeaway from this game. Really impressed with how A&M came in here in this game.
Yeah,
Um,
Marcel Reed, dog.
yeah, Marcel Reed really liked the plan they had for him. I'm sure it probably wasn't the entire offense, but what they asked him to execute, he did a great job of doing. He's a really dynamic athlete. Thought they had some easy throws for him to get him into the flow of the game early on. Thought Colin Klein, that offensive staff, that had a really nice plan for him. Um, and their offensive line obviously made things a lot easier on them, being able to run the football. I think they out rushed Florida like 197-7 or something in the first half. I mean, it was just a completely dominant first half for
They
Texas
outrushed
A&M.
him for the game 310-52.
Yeah, so I think it was 197 to they were in the single digits at half. You highlighted the rushing totals for the game, so completely dominated the trenches. Um, I like I said, thought he executed their plan really, really well. So I want to talk about them a little bit. Got to talk about the winners first, obviously, before we get to Florida and Billy Napier. What were your thoughts on? I know you talked a little bit about last week, but what were your thoughts on how the two quarterback system and how they used them in this game for Florida?
I don't know, man. Obviously, you don't want to penalize Graham Mertz for being in a bad situation with the coach and everybody's looking forward to the future and the quarterback of the future, the young 5-star in there and all that behind him. Because Graham Mertz was really good last year. He shocked a lot of people. He turned my head for sure. And I don't think it's necessarily that Graham Mertz is bad. I just think it's the situation he's in is definitely not favorable for any quarterback. I don't necessarily love the two quarterback system. I think if you're gonna go down sinking, you got to stick with somebody and just ride it to the bottom. I don't think the flip flopping is going to help you at all. I don't think that's going to help you sustain drives or stick it in the end zone or come away with points of any sort. So if you're going to pick one is what I think. I mean, Lagway's fun to watch, but he's definitely not ready. I don't know why they keep putting him in there. Graham Mertz is your best. If he wants to stay coaching at Florida, which is not going to happen, he's not going to make it past Halloween. We said 2 years ago that Brian Harsin wasn't going to make it past Halloween. Take that to the bank, cash. Billy Napier's not going to make it coaching at Florida past Halloween. Take that to the bank and cash it too. So might as well put your best option in there to help save your job. That's my opinion on it. Maybe I'm seeing it from a different lens, and maybe I don't know what I'm looking at. But I think you got to have Graham Mertz in there because that's the best chance you have to win, and that's what you owe your kids, and that's what you owe yourself if you want to keep coaching next year at Florida.
Yeah, I thought the mix up with the quarterback, I thought hurt both of them in this game. I mean, Graham Mertz was definitely the most effective and the most
Yeah.
comfortable in
Mm-hmm.
this game. I mean, you could tell that. I just thought neither one of them could really get in much of a rhythm because they were constantly coming in and
Right.
out in this game.
Right.
I thought Lagway did some good things, but made some mistakes as well. But he was constantly in and out of the game. Same with Mertz. He got in a rhythm and then he got took out of the game, which they said that's what they were going to do. But it just made it hard on both of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You got down early in this game, so you could never really get anything going offensively. They had a little bit going in the second half after the game was already well in hand at that point. But yeah, I mean, Mertz was definitely the more comfortable, but he should be. I mean, the guy's a senior. He's ran this system last year, so I mean, obviously he's going to probably look more sure of himself in there. DJ Lagway did great against Sanford, but obviously it's you can only take so much away from that. I was kind of saying they should ride with him last week, and obviously didn't look as good as Mertz in this game, but like I said, I just felt like it was hard to tell because neither one were in it for a long period of time before the other one was coming in. So
Right.
just tough conditions, the lightning delay, and A&M basically just ran it down their throat. I mean, that's about all you can say. I mean, they got dominated up front, got behind the eight ball at halftime. They're down 20-0 because A&M's outrushed them by dang near 200 yards, and at that point, it's pretty much all she wrote. I loved what Le'Veon Moss ran the ball. I mean, A&M's backs ran it so hard too. Le'Veon Moss was great. Amari Daniels, was great. Marcel Reed in the run game made some scrambles, was able to step outside the pocket, keep his eyes downfield. He hit a deep shot on that. Just really good win for A&M. Came in, handled business threw Florida around on the line of scrimmage. And, obviously a lot of talk now going forward. We're going to talk a little bit about Arch and Quinn Ewers in Texas, but the real possible QB controversy, I guess you could say it, is with Texas A&M. The popular wants to talk about Texas, which I think's pointless to talk about.
Dumbest conversation.
Yeah,
Dumbest
I heard
conversation.
him. I listened to Feinbaum for 5 minutes, and that was conversation today. But really, with A&M, I think it's a lot more likely at A&M. Connor Wegman, which the staff has a lot of confidence in him. But Marcel Reed definitely showed himself really nicely in this game. He's going to get a run of the offense. He's going to get the reins for at least the next week or two. So I think there's a lot more chance of him getting run or maybe him taking that QB1 spot than Arch doing it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But all in all, really big win for A&M. And to me, it was already trending that direction. It was already 90% of the way there, but this definitely put the nail in Billy Napier's coffin at Florida. I mean, it was already headed that way. But to me, this officially put the nail in the coffin. It's not a matter of if, it's just when at this point.
Well, when you possess the ball for a whole quarter longer than your opponent, you're going to win that game 99% of the time. Texas A&M had the ball for 37-46, and Florida had the ball for 22-14. There was a whole quarter longer that Texas A&M had the ball. That's a recipe for winning. I do agree with you about the quarterback controversy. If there is any controversy, there's more of one at College Station than there is in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
But I will say, don't jump headfirst into the Marcel Reed hype just yet. Let's wait till he plays next week. Because this is Florida. We have seen the product they have had. I'm not saying Florida is a power or a group of 5 team, but South Florida would beat them. I wholeheartedly believe it. And this is just not the greatest scale. I agree that this is more of a conversation here, and it could be after we see him play the next week and possibly the next week. But right now, I'm going to hold my tongue on that. But I agree with you. There's definitely one here more than there is in Austin, because Quinn Ewers, on the cover of the video game, the backup sheriff or the new sheriff who don't need no backup in the Dr. Pepper commercials, was a potential Heisman finalist this year. Might have, if he can come back fairly quickly, could still maybe win the Johnny Unitas Award. These are not the same quarterbacks we're talking about here at all. I heard that conversation. I didn't know if we were going to bring it up. I did hear that conversation today. But Marcel Reed and Connor Wigman is much different than Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Quinn Ewers is a potential top 10 NFL draft pick. Connor Wigman might get drafted on the 4th, 5th day, maybe sign a free agent deal. I mean, might be a 7th round guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, not the same conversations we're having here. I can't believe that Texas fans are buying into this. They played UTSA. And their best player from last year is now on Texas, the defensive end. So they ain't got nobody pressuring the quarterback the way they did last year. I just think it is ridiculous how fast people will jump to the next thing. Like, I honestly, it ended up proving me wrong, but it was handled in a much different way. I felt that way about Alabama fans when the Jalen Hurts Tua situation was going on. You remember earlier in the year, and this was Jalen's second year starting, Tua's freshman year, or I guess it might have been, no, it's his freshman year. But earlier in the year, everybody was like, let's play Tua, play Tua, play Tua. And he would get in the 3rd and 4th quarter because they were blowing everybody out. And I'm thinking, are you not seeing the product on the field in the first half with your starting quarterback? He hasn't done nothing to take him out. And then obviously later in the year, it ends up working out for Alabama and he gets taken out. But there's just, people are so quick to move to the next guy in today's world. And I just think it's crazy when you have a generational talent at quarterback, and the only reason they're acting like this is because of his last name. Nothing against him. He played phenomenal. He played really well. Had a long running touchdown, looked really good, controlled the offense well, made some really good balls, or threw some really good balls. But the reason that fans are acting like this and the media is acting like this is because his last name is Manning, not Rogers or Aaron or excuse me, not Rogers or Smith or Gordon or something like that. It's Manning, and they're staples of the quarterback position in all of college football or in all of football. So that's the reason that it's a talk. I get it. I understand it. It's what's going to drive people into your show. But the fact that it's an honest, legit, people are wanting this to happen pisses me off beyond anything, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. No, a couple points I want to make. I agree with the Marcel Reed talk. I think it's too early to make a determination. Obviously, I just think the conversation's more there than obviously in Austin. But he's going to get his opportunity the next few weeks to see. That's the beauty of sports and the beauty of college football is this stuff always works itself out. It will work itself out by the play on the field. That's the great part about, everybody can talk about all they want with Marcel Reed, depending on how he plays, depending on Connor Weidman progresses from injury, coming back from injury. That's going to work itself out. So we'll see how that develops over the next few weeks. With Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, I'm not really I don't want to throw Texas fans on the bus here because I really haven't. I'm sure there's some of it. There's always you can't.
Yeah.
Can't
Everybody's got a bad handful. Everybody does.
You can't pay attention to the fringe 10% of each fan base. Like you can't really play into that too much. I haven't heard any Texas fans personally calling for Arch over Quinn Ewers. It's mostly media driven because it's a talking point. Obviously, he's a Manning. That's why this is even a conversation. Yep. If this is Arch Johnson, we're not even discussing this.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's Arch Manning. He did look great, and the great part about it is they're in a great position here. They've got a proven guy in Quinn Ewers who's been there, who's done that, who's played in big games, who is playing his best football right now. They also got a great young quarterback who they haven't had to rush along, who's been able to sit and develop and learn the offense. Now he's going to be able to get his feet wet a little bit. He did against UTSA. They've got UL Monroe, which is crazy. They have those scheduled back-to-back. Then he very well may get the opportunity to play the SEC opener against Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. So he's going to get a great opportunity to get his feet wet, to get some real game reps with the first team under his belt. That's going to be big for his development going forward in the future. Then Quinn Ewers comes back. As I said, playing his best football, who's been there, who's done that, who led this team to the playoffs last year, who's went into big time venues and won. They're in a great position right now. So Texas fans, just be thrilled with where you're at. Like I said, this is a great opportunity for him to get some game reps. To me, this is a lot like Matt Jones, which he got thrown in there a little bit more to the fire because it was at the end of the season in some big games. But, I think those gains for him were huge for his development the next year, and I think that's going to do wonders for Arch as well. But, yeah, it's mainly 95% a media talking point, and rightfully so. He's a Manning. That's what brings people in to talk about. But the main point I want to make, though, is Texas is in a great position.
And, okay, so I got a question about Quinn Ewers. Just thought of it while he was talking. If Quinn Ewers, so this is Quinn Ewers' third season in a row to get injured. Started for 3 years at Texas, has been injured every year at some point. Mm-hmm. Does this hurt his draft stock just solely on the purpose of durability? Does he slide down the draft board because he has proven that he's not very durable? And the last quarterback that I can remember getting hurt this often was Tua. And then we've seen that, not that he's had bad product in play in the NFL, but he is very injury prone in the NFL. Last year was the only season he's had that he didn't get injured.
Hmm.
So that may take some teams to not give him draft him early and give him the first round money and maybe later because of the injury prone. Do you think that's a possibility? Do you think he's so good that the talent outshines all that?
I guess it
I'm
could
mixed
have.
on it. I really don't know right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I think a lot hinges on how he comes back and plays the rest of the year, obviously. I think it could a little bit maybe, but the only thing is, how many times have you seen in the NFL draft, specifically in the first round, how desperate teams get for quarterbacks and how many guys get picked way before they should?
That's true.
So I think in the same kind of token there, I think he's going to go pretty early regardless because he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks on the board, and they're not going to sit long. For better or worse, teams are going to pick quarterbacks early, a lot of times before they should be picked. So I don't think it'll probably hurt him too much. I mean, it's definitely you'll definitely hear that in the pre-draft process about some durability concerns, things like that. I mean, all those kind of pros or cons get thrown out there in the draft process. But ultimately, with him being one of the top quarterbacks on the board, I don't see him sitting too long because just how desperate teams get in the draft
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
that
And
position, obviously.
if you want a sure enough bet, I mean, so far it's been proven. Just take the Texas over in every game they have because they're going to score. But then
Yeah,
the final, well, the final game we'll cover, and then we got one more talking point I want to touch on. But the final game we'll cover is Georgia and Kentucky, and man, another great SEC matchup. It wasn't quite as good as South Carolina and LSU, just because there wasn't as many fireworks, wasn't as many points scored, it wasn't as big of an offensive show. But man, Kentucky to turn around after getting a thumping from South Carolina a week ago, not scoring a touchdown, to taking the number one team in the nation down to the wire. And there were some questionable penalty calls in that game, too, that could have favored Kentucky uh, uh, to extend a drive and potentially win a game. So I, I was very shocked by Kentucky because I thought for sure they get thumped by South Carolina. South Carolina's a much better team this year, but they get embarrassed like that, and then they got to play the number one team in the nation. No chance. No chance. Like that's just what the went through my head. Like they're going to get ran out of the stadium by halftime. The stadium's going to be empty, and sure enough, I was dead wrong. 6-3 at halftime. Georgia's trailing, which we've seen that before. We've seen that before under Kirby. They were down a couple years ago to Missouri. They were down last year to I can't remember who. I can't remember who it is, but we've seen it before. But this is as hard of a time I've seen a Georgia team be down and play sloppy to still fight for a win. I mean, they damn near lost this game. The other games they ended up pulling away with enough time where it was comfortable enough. Like, all right, we got this in the bag. I mean, Kentucky had a chance to win it at the very end, and Georgia sacked up, but there were some questionable penalty calls in that game. I don't think any of them really had too much of an effect, not like the South Carolina LSU officiating. Um, but I think that there's some question marks on Georgia now that people thought was set solid, and I'm excited to see how it turns out because I think Georgia's going to be fine. I don't think Kirby Smart's going to allow this to snowball into something bigger, but I don't think Georgia's the juggernaut everybody expects them to be right now.
I agree, and I mean, I think that's kind of the beauty of this season, though, is even Georgia, who's clearly, I mean, Georgia's one of the best teams in the country. They always get better as the year goes on, but even even they have some flaws and some weaknesses that, like, I think that's why this is going to be such a special season. Is I don't feel there's a really a dominant or an untouchable type of team. I think everybody's beatable. Everybody has weaknesses and flaws. And obviously Georgia's going to get better as the year goes on. They've had these close calls before. Missouri 2 years ago, they go on to win a national title. They specifically struggled in SEC road openers.
Yeah.
At Auburn last year went down to the absolute wire. So I mean, this
A
isn't
couple years ago against
uncommon.
Kentucky went down to the wire too. I think they won on a Brock Bowers walk-off touchdown, 121
Yeah.
to 14 or something like that.
So yeah, I mean, this isn't completely uncommon. I think one thing, they were very thin on the defensive line in this game. They have several guys out with injury. They weren't able to rotate normal depth, so guys were playing a lot more snaps than they would potentially play. I think they got a little bit fatigued. And I think one of the big things is their offensive line hasn't played up to their standard yet. Even this entire season. This game, honestly, it was like Clemson in the first half, but except the entire game. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very similar to that first half of the Clemson game. It just lingered for 60 minutes instead of 30. They just didn't put scores on the board to put them away. It was a very kind of a eerily similar feeling game to it a little bit. Um, but yeah, I just don't think the offensive line is quite played up to the standard that you've seen. Carson Beck, specifically in this game, didn't look near as comfortable as we've seen him. And that's kind of a thing with Carson Beck, too, is obviously, I mean, he's played at an elite level, but just like all quarterbacks, they struggle with pressure, or most all quarterbacks do. When you can make him move his feet and knock him off of his point, knock him off of his timing, you see him look a lot more uncomfortable and struggle a lot more. In this game, you kind of saw it in the SEC title game last year. When he's dropping back, 3-step, 5-step drop balls out, he's in rhythm. He's as good as there is in the country. But when you can knock him off his point, make him move his feet in the pocket and have to reset a little bit, he can get a little more inaccurate, obviously rushing things a little bit. So that's really the key. And I think Kentucky was able to generate a lot more pressure than people were anticipating. It's kind of the beauty of college football. It's the beauty of this game is you can get your doors blown off by South Carolina last week and absolutely take number one to the wire on the same field and everything. It's just crazy. I think that's why, you just expect the unexpected. You never, I mean, most of the time Georgia's going to win comfortably, but you just never know. And as I said this in the previews. I mean, if you're going to get Georgia, the best time to get them's early, first month of the season. You've seen it the last few years. As good as they've been, everybody has some weaknesses, some things to have to work through. I do think the difference with Georgia this year, too, is I mean, they got 3 really tough elite road games. You got to go to Alabama in 2 weeks. You got at Texas, at Ole Miss. They got Tennessee still. So I just think the schedule, I mean, it's ramped up a lot more this year, especially with those games on the road. So as good as Georgia is, and obviously they're going to get better. I'm not concerned with them or anything like that. As far as them playing well, but I do think even them, I don't think that gap is super large between anybody. Like I think the gaps are all relatively small within the top tier of college football. So that's why I think it's gonna be fascinating down the stretch. But all in all, bye week's coming for them at a good time. Same with Alabama, a couple of injuries on both sides. But they gonna be all out war in 2 weeks. Obviously, we'll get into it more next week. But not overly concerned with them. But I don't think the gap is super large in college football this year.
And then, down in Auburn, Hugh Freeze pulled the trigger, made a quarterback change. Hank Brown got his first start. Did pretty good. 17-25 for 235 and 4 touchdowns. Not throwing, interceptions is nice. It was against New Mexico, who is like the worst defense in all of NCAA or next to worst defense in all of NCAA. So it's a lot like I was saying about Marcel Reed. You can't really make a judgment right now because of who they've played. We'll wait and make our judgment after next week when he takes on Arkansas, because Hugh Freeze said after the game, yes, Hank Brown is going to be our starter against Arkansas. So this is his first real test. It was good getting him in a game like this, allowing him to get the first game, whatever you want to call them, jitters or whatever, get it out of his way and have a full game of the playbook and understanding what's going on and how it's going to feel and what it's going to look like and what just, taking it all in. So he's got that out of his way, which is nice. But, we can take this to leading into next week. But Auburn takes on Arkansas to open up SEC play. Arkansas comes to Auburn, which traditionally is good for Auburn. They've won their matchups there in recent years. Won a bunch of them fairly handily. Won last year really handily. But this is a different Arkansas team we've touched on several times. Auburn opens up as a 3.5 point favorite. Actually, they opened up at a 3.5 point favorite, but right now they're at a 3 point favorite. Over under is at 58.5. Arkansas money lines at plus 130. Auburn money lines at minus 150. So Vegas sees something they like in Auburn. Obviously, being at home, you get a little bit. I guess it's about 3 points, so it's about right. But I'm extremely nervous because Auburn did not play well defensively last week. Obviously struggled with the running quarterback from New Mexico. He was able, man. He was. I don't know if you watched any of it or saw any clips, but if he was in the backfield, you were not bringing him down. You might touch him, you might wrap him up. You were not getting him down. He was going to throw it away, or he was going to scramble for 10, or throw it downfield and burn the top off our defense 3 or 4 times because their eyes were in the backfield playing undisciplined football. That's the stuff that's going to hurt Auburn in the long run, especially getting the SEC play with a quarterback like Taylor Green.
Yeah.
I don't think he's quite as shifty in the pocket as Devin. I can't remember his last name. As
Napier.
Devin Napier from New Mexico was. I don't think he's nearly quite that shifty, but
I
he's
was impressed with
definitely,
him.
dude, he's unreal. But he's definitely as good of a runner, if not better. Much, much better passer. So the DBs have got to play disciplined football. If they play undisciplined and get their eyes caught where they're not supposed to be this week, it can turn into 6 instead of a 50-yard gain that turns into 3, or you shut them out. It's going to turn into 6. So that's got to play discipline, got to do your job. And then offensively, I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't think the 2 times we've seen our offense look good was against 2 scrubs. Then they looked really bad against Cal, but it was bad all around. But it was really, really sloppy quarterback play. Really, really sloppy quarterback play. So I really don't know what to expect from the offense, because from what I gather from Hugh Freeze is at the Cal game, when he went back and watched film, is when he realized he had to make a change at quarterback. So when he watched film, it was much worse than what he saw live on Saturday. He went back and watched it, and that's when he decided, all right, I'm making a change. So we really I don't know how the offense is supposed to look, or if it looks good, because the quarterback wasn't making the right plays. If Hank can make the right plays and the offense is supposed to work as good as it did week 1 and this past week, then I think Auburn's chances are okay. But it's a much better defense, much better offense we're playing. We're going to have to run the football. Jarquez got his career high this past Saturday with 20 carries. Career high. They've been doing that, man. They've been feeding him way too little. They finally got a career high. I think he had over 150 yards, had a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown. The running back's they're going to have to set the tone. If the offensive line can create gaps and just give Hank a little bit of time, Auburn, I think, will have a chance. But if they're getting after the quarterback, Auburn's going to be in trouble, because Hank Brown is less mobile than Tom Brady, and at 45 years old. So if it gets to where he's going to have to scramble around and create plays and extend plays, it might get ugly quick for Auburn. So the offensive line's got to come out. They got to set the tone, but Auburn's got to be able to run the football. If they can run the football, they'll be okay. And defensively, they just got to play sound, disciplined football. They can do that. Like you said, you're going to give up yards in the 20s. You just got to be able to dominate there in the red zone, hold them to 3, maybe force a turnover. But the offense, I'm not really sure what to think, like I said, but the defense is the biggest weak link that I've seen so far this year. And that's what worries me, because the defensive front was supposed to be the strong point of the defense. And right now, it's kind of one of the bigger question marks to me.
What are your thoughts? Like, give me a prediction on this game. What do you see happening? Do you think Auburn wins at home, or do you think Arkansas comes and gets a road win?
Honestly, dude, I think Arkansas is playing a little bit of a look ahead this weekend against UAB. They got it right in the second half, and they were fine. The way they run the football, I think Auburn could be in trouble, man. I really do. I think Arkansas could. If I had to guess right now, I'm not betting this game, obviously. If I was to bet it, I'd take Arkansas plus 3. I think Arkansas probably wins like 28-14, 28-17, something like that. I just think their offense.
Not bad, huh? You think double-digit Arkansas win?
I'm telling you, man, the defense did their job against Cal. But if the defense plays as bad as they did this past week, and you can call it a look ahead too, whatever. But if the defense plays as bad as they did this past week against Taylor Green and getting their eyes caught in the backfield, they are going to get in trouble big time because they got burned 3 times on that exact reason this past Saturday. If they allow themselves to keep getting burned on that and keep getting cooked on that, it's going to be a long season, but it's going to be a long day Saturday, and it might be a flip flop of what happened last year. I think Auburn's defense is going to be able to keep them in it, but if Auburn's off, if Hank Brown can't figure it out and it's looking the same as if Peyton's in there, obviously not with the turnovers, but not be able to put it in the end zone, it can be a long day Saturday. And if I had to pick right now, that's what I'm picking. I just don't have the confidence. What have I seen to have the confidence? You know what I mean? So this is Hank Brown's first real game, and he ain't really had that many snaps, thrown 20-something passes. So it's like a little nervous. They're going to rely on the run game. They need to. They have to. But Arkansas knows that too. So I really don't know what to think. If they can run the ball, I like our chances. But, man, if I'm picking right now, I'm thinking Arkansas 28-17.
Yeah, I think, with this, I mean, you make a good point. I really don't know what to expect. I mean, definitely, like you said, Auburn's defense hasn't been as good as I've expected so far.
Not that they're terrible, but they definitely
Yeah,
aren't
I
the
mean,
standard we thought.
not terrible by any means, but just not quite as good as I've expected so far. Like I said, it's three games in. Um, it's not like they've been bad in any game or anything. Um, I think both teams are going to be able to run the ball, but at the same token, both teams know the other one wants to run the ball. So it's one of those things like both teams are going to have to rely on it. I mean, it's going to come down to who runs the ball better. Obviously, turnovers, big key as well. Who runs the ball better, who takes care of the ball better. You do those two things, you're going to win this game. I really like Arkansas's run game, what I've seen with them. Jaquindon Jackson, obviously Taylor Green in the run game is really dynamic. Um, Throwing the ball, pretty good as well. Throw the ball pretty good against Oklahoma State. So,
Yeah.
But I also think Auburn's going to be able to run the ball in this game as well too. I do think, the offensive line obviously needs to be better. They've got to set the tone up front and get that run game going. You don't want this to be on Hank Brown's shoulders completely. And Arkansas is thinking the same thing. Like, hey, we don't need to put this on Taylor Green's arm totally either. That's where this is such an intriguing game to me, is I don't know exactly what to expect. Still a lot of unknowns with both these teams. I do agree with you a little bit. I would slightly lean Arkansas, just what I've seen, but it is at Auburn. That's obviously historically Auburn's played really good against Arkansas here. One majority of the time against Arkansas here. So I would lean Arkansas slightly, but I think, like you said, I don't know really what to expect. I just feel like there's still so many unknowns with both these teams. It's going to be a great game Saturday. I think it's a one-score game, either way you slice it. But yeah, I'm really intrigued for this. Is probably the game, or definitely one of the games I'm most looking forward to.
And then we got the Tulip Bowl kicking off at 11 o'clock. Cam texted me on Saturday and said I need to play on Nickelodeon, and I agree with him completely. Florida is going to Starkville to take on Mississippi State, and Florida's a 5.5-point favorite. Dude, I'm laying with Mississippi State here. Blake Shapen, he's a baller. I haven't seen anything from Florida to prove to me that I should bet on them ever, unless it's under their season total wins. I think that locker room is probably completely deflated now because they're hearing all the rumors about they're probably losing their coach. It's probably coming. If he loses this game, it's probably coming this weekend. It's hard to stay focused when all that's going around. I mean, you can say we're not worried about the outside noise. We don't hear the outside noise. BS. You can try and keep it from as much as you want. I just think there's much more stacked against Florida than there is Mississippi State this weekend. Mississippi State's playing with house money, man. I like Mississippi State to win. I don't necessarily think they win big. The total's 57.5. I don't know about that. I don't know that these offenses are that good. But I like Mississippi State. I mean, hostile environment. They're hosting Florida. Florida's down right now. Mississippi State was not expected.
That Toledo game's not scaring you?
Yeah. No, dude. I I don't have faith in Florida
It's
at
more
all.
down on Florida than up on Mississippi State.
Yeah. It's nothing that I think Mississippi State's just some showstoppers. I'm not bought in on Florida whatsoever. I think with all that's going around their program right now, I think it's a lot harder to lock in for a game than it is for Mississippi State, who's playing with house money, because they know that everybody's expecting them to lose and they suck, and they're not playing for anything this year.
Yeah, this is I mean, this is a tough one, obviously. I think kind of like you said, I think it's just who's more motivated to play this game. Who comes out with the right mindset, who prepares the right way during the week. Um, what's Florida gonna do at quarterback? Are they gonna change it up? Are they gonna run the same crap they did Saturday? Um, I mean, big game for both teams because there's not many SEC wins on either of their schedules. So I mean, obviously somebody's gonna win this game Saturday. So look at it as an opportunity to get an SEC win. It's still early in the year. I mean, I think both teams are going to be motivated to play it. I just, who's prepares the best. They're both coming off getting handled. Toledo comes in, good team in the MAC, going to be good on action this year. Toledo's a good team, but man, Mississippi State's got to be pretty embarrassed for getting worked by them in Starkville. And Florida, obviously, got to be feeling the same vibes. They're not very good there either. I don't really have a prediction on this. Definitely going to tune into it. I think it's still going to be interesting to me. But yeah, I think it just boils down to who's really prepares the best this week and who's able to kind of put the path behind them and just focus on this game. Even though both teams are not going to do much this year, it's still early in the season. It's still, it's the SEC opener for Mississippi State, second SEC game for Florida. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I agree with you on this. If Napier he loses this one, he won't see the end of September or
I got some
September
numbers for you.
24th, whatever day Sunday is.
I got some numbers for you. 191 to 13. Do you know what that is?
That sounds like Florida stats getting out rushed in the first half Saturday.
That's not a bad guess. That's not a bad guess. But it is the amount of points that Tennessee has scored this year versus the amount of points they have given up this year.
That sounds about right.
191 to 13. They absolutely ran through Kent State this weekend, 65-0 at halftime. Tennessee goes to Kent State and offers to have a running clock or shortened second half. They declined. They just took that ass whipping like a man. And now Tennessee and Josh Heupel go into Norman, Oklahoma to face Josh Heupel's former team that he won a natty with.
They fired him as offensive coordinator.
And they fired him as offensive coordinator. You are right. And that's when he went on his road tear of becoming who he is today. Was spent a lot of time on the coaching staff there. And now he's got one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in college football right now. No one's shown they can even come close to stopping them. Granted, it's been 2 cupcakes, but NC State, they're not a bad team, and they had no clue what to do defensively. Oklahoma's had some tough games. They've had some close games with some people that they're better than. The line on this game is Tennessee at 7. I'm not betting my whole account on this game on Tennessee -7. I know that I was high on some picks last week, and I was way off. I just don't see Oklahoma hanging with Tennessee at all. Maybe for the first quarter. I think Tennessee runs away with this. It's a revenge game for Josh Heupel. He caught off the Dogs in the second quarter last week. The Dogs will not be caught off this week. I'm telling you. I don't think that they're going to score 50 or more like they have every other week, but I do think that their defense is good enough to control Oklahoma's offense, give them some trouble, give them some fits. And I like Tennessee to win this game by 2 or 3 possessions, to be honest with you.
I said preseason, this is appointment television. This
Mhm.
game still is in my mind, 100%. Um, I'm very much looking forward to seeing this Tennessee offense go up against a really elite defense in Oklahoma. Um, I do think, like you said, the difference with Tennessee is how they're playing defensively. Obviously, haven't really got tested yet there. I mean, the NC State, decent team. They dominated. If they can go into I know Oklahoma offensively hasn't been great yet either, obviously, but if they can go into Norman and dominate on the defensive side of the ball, I think will go a long way. Um, I mean, I think right now, I mean, Tennessee, without a doubt, I think is a national title contender. Like I thought they were a playoff contender. I think they are becoming a national title contender. I
Because of
think
their
that
defense.
because of
Because of
their
their defense.
defense.
100%.
Offensively, they've been as good, better,
Than
honestly, than I
advertised.
anticipated.
Yeah.
They have been unbelievable so far. Like I said, we're really going to find out Saturday night, though. I mean, this is a very, very good defense. Oklahoma's been good defensively in every game. I mean, this you would think is one of the better defenses in the country. I mean, at least in the top, 10 or 15, I would think. Um, even if they're a little off, I mean, you're talking about a
Yeah.
top 15-point defense probably. So if they can go into this crowd and put together a really good performance, I think that goes a long way for their confidence. I agree with you. Based on what we've seen, you have to take Tennessee. I mean, just on all we can go off is what we've seen in 3 weeks. I mean, Tennessee's looked as good as you can imagine so far, as good as people could have possibly hoped for. Even their biggest optimists, I think they look as good as you could hope for. Um, but I think that that's the great thing about it is we can have all these takes and stuff, but we always find out. Like we're
Yep.
gonna find out one way or the other. I think we'll go a long way into finding that out Saturday night. I agree with you. I think Tennessee wins this game. The only thing that gives me pause, like I said, is we just know how this game is.
Mhm.
We know, just when you think, man, yeah, they're gonna come in and smoke them, smoke just like Georgia. They're gonna smoke Kentucky. I was convinced, just like you are, man. They're gonna smoke Kentucky, and then they didn't. You just never know. That's what gives me a little pause, but I mean, absolutely, based on what we've seen, and as good as Tennessee's looked, and OU struggled some. I mean, you would have to take Tennessee, but you just never know on the road. I
Mhm.
know Norman's going to be rocking first ever SEC game for them. You would have to imagine um, they're going to put their best performance together. But yeah, if I'm going off what I've seen so far, I'd have to take Tennessee in this game. But man, it's going to be a great atmosphere, a great matchup with this Tennessee offense and OU defense.
Absolutely. And I like Tennessee just because they can score so fast. They can score in one or two plays, and the defense can play a perfect game, but you miss on two plays, and that's 14 points with an offense like Tennessee has. That's my only thing is I think Tennessee is going to get them a time or two quick, and I don't think Oklahoma has that type of offense to answer back at the rate they need to. Their defense is going to have some stops, but they're going to get got for sure. I just think this offense is too quick, too powerful. They take a lot of shots, and somehow they're always open. I swear it's ever since Hendon Hooker's been there, it feels like every time they drop back to take a shot, they're wide open.
Honestly, right now, I may eat this and eat these words in 2 weeks. But honestly, this is the team I'm most scared of on Alabama's schedule. I mean, I'm more scared of Tennessee, partially because it's in Knoxville. That Georgia's at home. That does make a big difference. But just the style of play with the quarterback, the weapons they have, and the way their defense is playing. And as big of a rivalry game as that is, man, I mean, Alabama Georgia's obviously been huge over the last, 6, 7 years. Um, but man, this Tennessee team scares me. There's no doubt about it. It scares me. Um, Still early, obviously week 3. I mean, there's going to be a lot more to. I mean, you're going to find out a lot more even before then. They've still got 3 more games before they play Alabama, but yeah, they're the team right now that probably scares me left on the schedule. To be honest with you,
I don't blame you.
just appreciate everyone tuning in. It's been a lot of fun these first 3 weeks. Um, some pretty good matchups this week as we've highlighted. Some pretty good out of conference games to keep an eye on. Um, USC's going to Michigan, so a couple good Big 12 matchups. Utah and Oklahoma State. I'm eager to see. Um, Nebraska and Illinois is a top 25 game on Friday night. Who would have thunk it? Nebraska and Illinois on a Friday night, top 25 matchup. Dylan Raiola looking good so far. So there's some intriguing games this week, but I'm telling you what's on the horizon. Man, I cannot wait for these next few weeks, a month. I mean, the rest of the regular season. That's the beauty of college football is it really gets better as we go. But I tell you what, in the month of October into September, we have got a couple epic weekends. I mean, we've got some absolute barn burner type weekends. I cannot wait. So stay tuned to us, like and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that. At Saturdays_SEC on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. Follow us on that as well. And we will talk to you guys after week 4. Hope y'all enjoy it.
Thank you, guys.